Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of 2.5 Salesman Podcast. I'm your host Mario, together with my co-host Julio, and today we have a guest for you, Matthias. How you doing, man?
Hey, living the dream.
Living the dream. Oh, for sure. For you guys who don't know who Matthias is, we will drop his LinkedIn in the episode description. So please make sure to follow him. He's an excellent guy, especially when talking about sales. So today's episode is all about understanding your ideal client profile and target market. And Matthias, being an expert in that, will assist us in kind of unraveling this beast, as they say. So, Matthias, maybe initial thoughts on the topic, just to kind of scratch the surface, and then we will let it rip, as they say.
Yeah, great, great to be here with you guys. Thanks for the invitation. So my first thought, probably going one step back. In sales, especially if you're building up sales organizations, there is two things you never have. That's money and enough resources. So that brings me to the point that it's only about focus as first priority, focus as second priority, and focus as a third priority. So that means when we talk about what we do and what we invest time in, we need to be very, very mindful about that. And I think that's true for a one-man show as it is for a company with 500 employees. That is different for a global market leader with 50,000 employees, but for everything in between, that's actually it.
Yes.
So what's your thought on that?
Well, you said focus, right? It reminded me of the old Japanese saying, what it takes for a retail business to be successful. It's only three things, like it's location, and then location.
Yeah, I copied that.
Julio, you are not speaking, so while you fix your mic, Matthias, let me ask you. So, like, what would you say to a business or businesses that believe they can succeed without, like, clearly defined target marketplace? Is that a fantasy world, or some can actually pull it off?
Well, what do you do if you basically address everyone? You basically address no one, because what you have to do is you have to create a message that fits to absolutely each and everyone, right? And as more generic a message is, the less the message can touch an individual, a person. That is true for a business-to-business sell as well as for an individual sell. For sure, that's not true for an Apple. Again, that's a global market leader. That's a total different story. But if I have a bakery around the corner and I want to sell cheap stuff and expensive stuff, I want to be fancy. On the other hand, I want to be affordable, So, and then you end up, so what a message do you give to anyone, right? Basically, in the end, you give no message. And no message means no emotions or no clear call for action, no clear business value. And that usually doesn't lead to a result, or at least not to as many results it could lead if you have focus on something specific.
Yeah. Julia,
can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, we can.
Oh,
wow. There we go. Welcome.
This is the magic.
Back.
This is the magic. Well, I mean, I think that the topic that comes to my mind whenever we talk about this is that I think in the past we used to talk about, you call a list, everybody's suitable, everybody can buy, right? While these days we talk more and more about really clearly understanding what is it that is the right target audience, who is it that's going to buy from you, right? I mean, SDRs or whoever, they can't be asked anymore to go for a list of 2,000 people to find 2 prospects. They'll just go somewhere else, right? So I think targeting, I probably would say it's probably the first thing with value proposition would be my first 2 topics to cover in the sales strategy.
Yeah. Also, very, 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 very good point here, especially if you're kind of an early stage, right? Because the total addressable market and the total serviceable market, or whatever it's called, this is not the world right? Like out of your total addressable market, you may have less than 1% of companies who actually fit where you have kind of a, where you can actually sell into.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why whenever someone raises funding, they start getting all the outreach in the world, right? Like, congratulations for your funding. Like, oh, really? Thank you very much.
And then usually you talk as a startup about the total addressable market, and that's true, that you say with that product, whatever antivirus solution, cloud service, whatever it is, you can address the market. Gartner defines it with whatever 5 or 10 billion. That is for sure true, but the question is, where do you get the most out of it, and how do you get traction immediately, right? So because you don't have any time in the world, right? You burn money. So the question is basically, what do you focus on? And if we talk about focus, it is a geographical focus. It is a focus in terms of account size. It is a focus in terms of verticals. And as a startup founder, you have to ask yourself the question, what is it where I think my product resonates best? And you might not even know that. So you try 2 or 3 things, and then you see where you get a response and where you get the best response, and then you focus on that area. That would be my recommendation and experience I made on my own.
All right. Well, you touched a little bit on one topic that I see a lot of chatter, right? And that is psychographics versus demographics, right? Especially in the data itself. So when talking about the ideal client profile, right? Maybe let's open the doors just a little bit to the debate of, do you want to have psychographics and focus on that, or demographics and kind of focusing on that, right? So for the listeners who don't know, psychographics are maybe a descriptions, so they're more qualitative. And demographics is really, age 25 to 40, female, C-level executive in a 250 to 1,000 people company, right? So this is exact, and this is more descriptive.
Right? I would say it depends really on the business. I think there is no generic answer. You have to ask yourself, what is what you offer? And what is the best customer fit you think? And it also depends if you're B2B or if you're B2C, which route to market you have, if you sell it on or offline, because we address, I think, a pretty bright audience here, right? So and based on that,
B2B mainly.
B2B mainly, yeah. But you might, for example, sell then to small companies, right? The bakery around the corner, or you might sell to a larger company like Česká spořitelna, and then it's a total different game. So I think it really depends. It depends also on your own skills. You cannot start an online shop B2B and you basically speak only one language and you're a one-man show and you say, I serve the world from tomorrow. Then you spend the next 5 years translating your website. And then in 6 years, you have the big launch. So
I've actually seen this thing happen, right?
I've seen it a lot. When I used to work in recruitment, all the recruiters were like, "Oh, we serve everyone in the world." I was like, "Really? You got 7 billion candidates in your data?
All of them?
That's amazing. We have a global reach. It's like global reach just means you can send a connection to someone in China. Doesn't mean you have a reach in China, But I think what resonates with me with this is anything and nothing are very similar words, right? It's like 2 letters different. So if you're specialist about everything, then you're also specialist about nothing. That's the way I've always seen it.
Yeah. No, very, very true. And we are touching, we did talk in kind of pre-show a little bit that we will maybe touch on niche markets, right? But I would say it goes beyond business selling into a niche market. It goes to even in recruitment in employees. Like, do you go for a generalist or you go for a specialist, right? And
you love this topic, Mario.
I'm not the debate. But yeah, I mean, I think that's super important when you are in a very niche market. Who is your ICP? Both psychographics and demographics. Very, very important, because we all come from B2B sales, and there is a difference how you sell into SMEs and how you sell into large, and then how you sell into enterprise.
I built up a few startups, or helped building up basically a few startups. You never do that alone. I was always asking, how does it fit? And in the early days, for example, of my career, I was working at Kaspersky, and we had a solution where we decided we marketed via SMB market first, and we were looking for reseller channels to multipliers, lots of small transactions. It resonated well. As the company evolved, we realized, because of the security advantage the solution has, we go into larger accounts. So we want in chemical accounts and governmental accounts. And then based on the governmental and enterprise accounts we won, we basically figured out that there is a pattern, right? So a pattern of kind of specific size of the enterprises and industries. So we digged into that, right? So that means we started with something, and an ICP, an ideal customer profile, basically evolves over the time as the company grows. But the big advantage from my point of view is, the more I talk to some, speaking in my world of selling software for the last 20 years, about ideal customer profiles and target accounts, is if you focus on a specific industry, you can build your name up. You understand specific industry needs. So if I know finance is regulated by Swiss banking law, currently in the press, right, with Swisscom and UBS. So there is a Swiss banking law called FINMA, Swiss banks have to be compliant with. If you're not in the industry and you just approach a bank and say, let's talk, I have the greatest solution on the planet, they ask you, is it FINMA compliant? And they say, I beg your pardon, what is FINMA? Can I have that for desert? Right, and they're already out.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's
true.
just one example. So if you don't know whom you're approaching, they don't take you for a trusted advisor, and you're faster out than you're in.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I think that the specialization is always how you become also a matter expert and an advisor for the client. When you start teaching the clients about things that aren't even relative to your product, but can help them, that's when you become like, then that's when the price goes out the window. This person is not just bringing me a service or a product, is bringing me solution to problems I didn't even know I had. If we want to go into the challenger like type of selling. And I think with the, specifically with the niche as well, that a lot of people undervalue is that the easiest way to do business is referral, right? That's undeniable. You get better referrals if you specialize in an industry, because they'll know each other. They'll move from one bank to the other and be like, oh, no, I want to work with Matthias. While this cross industry is a little bit harder. Not always. Some functions are agnostic, but it usually works like this as well.
Yeah, Matthias, in you mentioning Kaspersky and how you guys did the targeting, I see startups kind of fall into this trap where, especially if we are talking about scale-ups, right? So kind of maybe a little bit down the road, right? And they tend to collect enormous amounts of data, basically on everything, and then kind of it's called analysis paralysis, kind of kicks in, right? So have you do you have any experience with this, or did you see any startups kind of just collecting enormous amounts of data and just kind of being inside their heads and just not knowing what to do?
Yeah, as a startup, you usually don't have the back office functionalities and the data science to really leverage it. I mean, if we talk about pure born cloud startups which target consumers, that's a different animal. But if we are talking about the B2B, it is more a bit high level. I mean, for sure, you look, whom do you win? Why do you lose? Usually use Salesforce and you put that in. But what I realize also, I mean, this is true for everything, that the quality of the data basically comes with the salespeople entering it and the systems engineers. And especially salespeople are very, yeah, you're laughing and you're right.
Good luck with that.
Terrible admin.
It's salespeople usually don't do that shit, you know. And so I saw companies making or try to make bad decisions based on data. So I worked for a very hyper growth startup a couple of years ago with at Zscaler, and had a conversation with the CEO, and he analyzed some data and said, oh, if I look at this and this, we have to make that decision without going into the details. But because I was very close to each and every client and to each and every salesperson, I actually was surprised about his conclusion. I was not based on the data he had, right? I mean, his conclusion based on the data was great, but so basically I didn't believe in that data. So I basically went into Salesforce, had rerun reports, reviewed with the sales folks manually, and then I figured out the data in Salesforce was not true. They just entered the, you enter a mandatory drop-down field, they pick the first one. And then, oh, holy shit, we have a pattern here. No, you haven't. You have just someone who picks the first one. And so, I mean, this is probably not fully answer your question, but the point is you need to be very careful which data you analyze, depending on how you gather it. And my experience is double check that rather 4 times, because I saw so many companies doing the wrong decisions based on that.
Yeah, since we are on the topic, I have a really fun story in one of the previous startups. So we were kind of frantically analyzing what is the sales cycle, right? So we were focusing on both sales cycle and funnel velocity, right? So sales cycle, for the listeners who don't know, is from the moment you contact someone until the deal is closed, how much time has passed, and then funnel velocity is how fast do you go through the stages that you set arbitrarily in your CRM, right? So we were seeing like a 6 months, but it didn't feel like it was a 6 months sales cycle. Something was wrong. And then I sit with the reps, and what the reps basically do is they go into the CRM, they say, okay, I will start outreach, and then they start 2 months after.
Of course, of course.
And they just add 2 months to the sales cycle for no reason.
And I saw it the other way around when we were trying to shorten the sales cycles. They just, I mean, it's basically almost the same approach, but to shorten the sales cycles, they wouldn't open the opportunity at all, and then, or not open an upsell opportunity, for example. And then you have the first sale, whatever is 6 months, and then they wouldn't open it. And then they open it and close it. And then you have a 3-day sales cycle versus a 6 months that makes it an average 3 months. So now the execs go out and say, we can sell in 3 months. That's amazing, right? Well, first it's an upsell, it's different versus a new biz. And then, if you're in a startup, and that's another thing, right? In a startup, if you work with averages, you have to be very careful. If the data you have is really big enough to justify that.
Yeah. We always use median as a preferred metric.
I think the general problem, though, is that we're teaching salespeople to go outside the process, right? This is what they do. If the standard salesperson were to stick to a process, they would have to call procurement, submit an RFI, blah, 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 right? No way you would ever get deals done by just following the process. So you teach them to go outside the process. So obviously, what do? They're focusing more on the outcome than on anything else. If you tell them, let's shorten the sales cycle. Oh, we got a perfect solution for that. Don't worry. Don't worry. We just don't open the deal until it's closed.
That's a very good point, and probably.
And then track everything in the notebook.
Yeah, exactly.
It really comes to the culture of the company, right? And I think it's important to create a culture where salespeople don't try to do that, because then you basically cannot work with the data. And if you cannot do that, you're not able to make proper decisions. So it really comes back to the culture where you can ask, where you are allowed to fail, where you get coaching, right? Where you get a proper enablement, all of that, and not a culture of being afraid that basically if you ask for help or something like that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Maybe from your vast experience, if you could maybe remember, let's say an example where you either work with a startup or work in a startup, and then you either used an unconventional or maybe like a controversial method to uncover what is the ideal client profile or target market. Maybe a method that some of the established businesses, or I'll go right ahead, conservative businesses just would not use or think of.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're industry for a couple of years, you know lots of people from the customer side and also very well respected reseller partners. So what I usually do, even before I join a company, I ask a few of my trusted contacts. I say, would you buy that product? You know, why would you buy that product? How do you view that, etc.? So I get coaching from a CIO, from a CISO, from a network or security architect I know, and I just ask them for advice. And most people are really happy to help if you ask them for advice, even if you're not super close sometimes. For example, when I considered joining a company once and they had a product where I thought finance would be the best fit. So I called a finance contact I was not super close with, but I said, hey, can you help me out and let me know what you think about that? And I think you learn a lot. And then what I also do is, as soon as we won a few clients, I immediately build customer advisory boards. I invite them, you know, for get-togethers, spending the evening together and discuss that. How can I add more value? How do you see the value? Did you leverage the value of the product, etc.? How is it viewed a level above you? And I think that helped me. That is unconventional because not enough companies do it. It's as unconventional as reference selling, which everyone should do. So, but it is basically very, very helpful because that gives you a lot of insights. And if they like it and you join that company, or if they advise you when after you join and they like it, hey, you opened up your first opportunity just by asking someone how great it is, right? So it could be even a sales tactics to ask for an opinion to get an opportunity, right?
This is actually in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Is like, oh, here's our product. Would you advise us how we can improve it? And they're like, oh yeah, we definitely can. This is how you improve it. Well, sounds good. Would you like to buy it now? I was like, well, actually, now I would because I designed it myself. I was like, perfect. Look, I have a follow-up question on this because one of the things I face a lot with startups, right, is the ICP creation progress. And what do you think? I think creating it, we kind of talked about it, but what do you think is the best way to train the salespeople on the ICP? Because big problem is all the SDRs or salespeople, they get stuck in these boardrooms talking about product, right? So what would be the ways, I've got some ideas, but what would be the ways that you've seen the most effectively done?
I would first go one step back, and it all depends first how you pay people, right? So I had that also in a company. I came in, they did SMB business, they did channel, they did MSSPs, they did big deals. And what you end up doing then, if you get paid on everything, for example, on a region, you do the thing which comes inbound. That's natural, that's human, right?
Of course.
But that's not naturally the thing you should do. So you pay the SDRs, BDRs, however you call them, you pay the reps on ICP. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is for sure, you have to define that list, right? And probably you're referring more to the step in between, right? How do you find the right ICP accounts? Or do you mean if we define them as a leadership team, how do you
filter it down? Yeah, how do you train? Because I think, look, finding as a leadership team, there's plenty of ways you do this, right? But I think how you actually then train the people to do it, I think that's not really a mystery solved yet.
Especially when you have SDR teams doing outreach.
Yes. That was actually my thinking was onboarding of SDR. Is there a way to not make it terribly boring?
I made super progress in the last year with hiring an SDR team here in Prague. And the first secret sauce is they were sitting next to me in my office. So not an SDR manager who never has been a sales rep is basically supporting them and looking at metrics. The second thing is how you measure them. I had once at Kaspersky back in the days, an incredibly positive, proactive BDR. She did call by call, 70 a day. And then she said, Matthias, I didn't close a single deal. they told me to do my 70 calls. I didn't close a deal. I told her, from tomorrow, you're different. You don't focus on 70 calls. I want you to set up one meeting. And if you set up this meeting at 9:05, you shut down your PC and you go home.
Nice.
So, and I think 5, 6 calls in, because it's the mindset. If you pay the BDRs on making 70 calls, you get what you pay for, right? If you want a cheap food, you get that cheap chicken, right? And then you get it from the supermarket, then you can complain that this is not nice Italian food, right? So this is just some, you know, if you want mama's chicken, you need a proper free-range chicken, right? And that is, so the thing is, if you ask for cheap, you get it. If you ask for calls, you get it. And then it is about fine-tuning the message. Those guys were sitting next to me. And why did this call not work? We discussed about each and every, we say we do lots of swearing here, each and every fucking call. We reviewed it. Why did that not work? Why did that not work? Sometimes there is no answer. The guy's just rude. He had a bad day. You don't know, right? But sometimes you say, you can probably, and it's a failure culture. You not say, oh, you did this wrong. You say, probably you can try this. Probably you can try that. We did that. Sometimes 7, 8 calls later, I did that. I booked it, right? And then they start being by themselves creative and say, hold on, if this didn't work, that does work, that. And then they fine-tune the message. And last but not least, I want to talk for too long, is basically, it's all about target messaging. It is about, we talk about ICP, right? So that brings it back. So this is what a financial customer wants to hear. And this is what the CISO of a financial customer of a large financial wants to hear. So the messaging is targeted on the vertical, on the size of the vertical, and also on the key persona. And then also it has a personal effect. So I had BDR spending 4 hours preparing one call. You would say that's crazy, probably, but they wrote them a message. They said, I read your interview from last week. You stated that point. And this is why I think we should talk, because leading that financial, and then we reference to an existing customer, we learned from whatever, Capital One, the following. So, and that's actually it, because there is so much mess shit, right? That brings it back to that topic. We talk about why shouldn't be a message be generic? You don't talk to anyone, right? And more specific to the persona, to the market, to the size. So boom, and that worked incredibly well. We had BDRs setting up twice a week, incredibly good meetings with top 500 companies. And if you secure 2 of those meetings a week, you cannot ask for more if it's with key decision makers.
Well, it is like a very huge trend, exactly what you said, and I will just kind of clarify it a little bit for listeners, is the big shift, especially, and this is what Julie and I kind of talked outside of this podcast, is the shift from, hey, let's target everyone, to something that is called ABS, or account-based strategy, right? Just going after accounts and actually making sense. So it's nothing to do with personalization, because everyone can do personalization. Hey, Mathias, I see that you're a human and you breathe air. Let's talk. I mean, fuck off, right? But in the end, it is this relevant to you? Is this relevant to your pain? Is this relevant to how you do work?
What is your business pain? Why should you do it? What is the value for you personally or for your business, or ideally both?
I actually have, because Mario, you asked about an unconventional idea. That's something I tried with a startup recently. And basically, like, they were struggling to ramp up their SDRs, right? And there was a lot of product training, which was, again, the founders wanted to talk about the product, which is great. And then I suggested something that we used to do in my previous company, which is you get the SDRs to not target your ICP, but your, let's say, lower level ICP, right? So the ones that maybe are not in your vertical or are not in the industry, and what they do, they get experience selling the product, understanding it, but at the same time, the risk is really low. If they book a meeting, okay, it's not the best return of investment, but they are learning without risk. And at the same time, they can still bring some revenue. And actually, that's motivated pretty much all the parties involved, basically.
That is exactly what I did, actually, and I like that approach. for the beginning. So they started calling out to accounts where it doesn't really matter. Till they felt good about the pitch. And then basically when they did it, because you don't want to burn the CISO of one of the bigger banks, right? Because
Exactly.
you don't want to do that while the BDR is practicing. You know, in the US, you call them 2 weeks later again, it doesn't matter. In Europe, he will block your phone number, right? So they will remember you and they will say, I told you 2 weeks ago, fuck off. So, well, that happens, right? And so
Very true.
the thing is, I like that. I did that for the first time a year ago. I started it that way, and I can absolutely agree. It worked for me very, very well. When they feel comfortable, then they go for it, and then they learn faster because they're not afraid to fail.
Exactly. Well, yeah, exactly.
So Matthias, let me ask you this. This is kind of a topic that was maybe on the sides of the sales. Especially when discussing, especially with, say, younger reps, and that is competition, right? So what I sometimes see when consulting with startups or we're working with startups, even just talking, is that they design their ICP or target market to be kind of a little bit on the side of their competition, or just not like a full blown parallel. Like a just you know, just a little bit on the side, right? So as if they are afraid of the competition, they don't want to delve into those waters. So if you could maybe comment a little bit about
so
this specific.
It depends what you want to achieve. Do you want to win a battle or do you want to win the war? If you want to win a battle, go sideways. If you want to win a war, go in, right? But then when we talk about competition, no matter if an internal or an external competition or whatever competition we're talking about, it's all about, you need to know your competition and you need to know basically how, if you really can win against the competition. And if you don't, you cannot go head to head, but then you define the wrong ICP. But I have a very strong opinion. If you really want to win the war, so in my world, this is going on IPO, you have to go in and you have to beat the competition in key markets, right? And not you say, oh, I don't go into Germany, I go to in the Romanian market because there is less competition. That's fine, you can do that and you can make some decent money with it. That's perfectly fine, but you will not win the war with it, just a battle. And the same is true if we talk about internal competition, and that's anyway an interesting topic, like how do you motivate a BDR to be motivated? How do you motivate salespeople, right, outside of the money? And it is for sure also internal competition, it is promotion. I'm usually against heavy internal competition because it can create toxic culture. I'm more a fan of giving possibilities to promotions to high performers. And showing them additional equity or pay rises and other titles, etc., etc. But that's probably a different topic.
I mean, shotgun in the office is not allowed anymore. When I started in sales, I remember I swear to God, one time the managing director walked the office with a whip, with like a horse whip. He wasn't using it, but he was just walking around. I was like, I'm just started working in sales. What is this?
That's unbelievable. There is different leadership styles, right? I mean, I want to create a culture where the salespeople are all together in an office and they're truly happy for the other one winning a deal, right? They're truly happy if they are shareholders, right? They are truly happy if that customer will become a reference customer and help them to win their account. And if you have that kind of culture, which is very difficult to implement, but then that's the king's discipline, because then people go the extra mile.
Oh, I've seen this all over again, and maybe we will just deviate a little bit from our
we
topic.
like doing that.
We like doing that, yes. But it's speaking of the culture, I mean, everyone says we want teamwork, but then they don't incentivize teamwork. like they create this cutthroat culture where it's dog eat dog and everyone is running from themselves, but then are you a team player? And then everyone is a team player. No, do a team conversation, and then this is how you create team first culture.
Sure. I think there's a reason why in the Challenger, that is, I think the lone wolf is the second top performer, right?
Yeah, it is.
There's just so many of them in sales, and I agree. I remember when I was working previously, we tried to get the team culture, the team spirit, but at the end of the day, you also had a board with the top performer, everyone with billings next to their names. But at the end of the day, like that's you're still trying to get it to the top dog, right? There's no way around it.
Yeah. I do have a board, but it's only what team has closed.
Nice.
For that month. Like no individual performer.
Individual, nice.
I mean, it will be reflected in your salary, in your commission, in whatever bonuses we give out. But for the board, it's kind of in the office. It's all about team. Cool.
Makes
So
sense.
before we wrap it up, I have two more things, Matthias, for you. One, maybe your final thoughts on today's topic. And then after that, if you want, you can do a little bit of promo of what you're doing, what are you like, what is in the near future for you. So maybe let's do a little bit of recap of what we kind of thought.
Yeah, so from a recap perspective, I come back to what I said first, right? That usually makes sense. Focus. So no matter what you do, no matter what you do in a startup, focus on find your ideal customer profile, narrow it. Often smaller is bigger in the end. So you satisfy the customer needs, you have synergy effects, right? You have a more efficient marketing. You have often lower costs if you target one market, also from product development, etc. If you go into one market, I think the benefits are massive. Take the risk to do the right thing, right? Many founders don't do that because they say, well, if I can get everything, then probably I'm lucky and probably this happens if I do this campaign. Then
all the time.
And
we can service everyone.
When I learned one thing in my career, I mean, in a startup world, there is absolutely no gift. At a Zscaler, it took us 6 years. I worked there, so the company got founded in 2008. I started in 2012, and it took us 6 years before we started winning deals with low effort. So 6 years from 2012, right? And it was no single deal was easy, even if we gained market share over market share and we were a Gartner leader. And I was thinking, finally, no, there is no finally. That is till you reach that crucial point that takes forever. So until then, you need to be a nice player. That's basically my final comments. Julio, what's your view?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about personalization versus relevancy, right? It's the more you are relevant, the more your top of the funnel SDRs will know what to do, how to do it, and then AIs and basically closing the deals, but running the entire funnel. So from discovery and demoing and all of that is much more simpler. Never easy, but simpler.
Yeah, I think the way I like to see it is first you find John or Mary, that's your perfect individual. Then you find what are 10 more people that could find like him, etc. Until you get to 500. 500, you start with 500, and then at that point you expand. I think anything above, probably you can even start with lower than 500 at the beginning, but depends on how big your sales team is. But if you're just on your own, 100 people is more than enough. Start with that, make your message, everything resonate towards them, and then you expand, and then you expand, then you expand. And then eventually you're like Apple that service everybody, but Amazon started with books, right? Most people don't remember. Apple started just doing like the personal Macintosh, it was called Mac at the time. So it's all about starting small and then getting it bigger later, I think.
Cool. Well, Matthias, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for joining us. We will leave you like 30, 40, 50 seconds if you want to promote something, and then we will close it off.
Yeah, I wanna talk quickly about what I currently do because it's a super sexy technology. So I'm currently working for Deep Instinct, and while it's a malware prevention company, and malware is usually not prevented but detected, so we really prevent that. And this is a business-to-business solution which is based on deep learning, patented deep learning technology. It's basically the ChatGPT of the anti-malware. It works basically on endpoints, on servers, etc., etc. And because of that, with a 3-year-old technology, because of the smart brain and the AI behind it, with a 3-year-old technology, we recognize even the latest ransomware. So if a 3-year-old brain, right? So no security updates, nothing 3-year-old, and you detect the latest and newest ransomware and threats. So that means basically this is a really new approach in how to detect threats, because you basically prevent them instead of detecting them. And it is a way where you basically have really true deep learning technology, not a bit machine learning in. And that's basically it. And thanks for
No problem.
having me here.
Cool. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Matthias. And please, his LinkedIn will be in the description of the video. Make sure to connect with Matthias, follow him on LinkedIn, and until next time.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ooh, sorry. I just did, my food came at this exact time. So I was going to get the food.
But you have to stop recording.
Oh, crap. Yeah. We can cut this. It's okay.